Fleet Admiral Zekthal stood on the bridge of the flagship Vortak, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the tactical display. The holographic star map showed their latest conquest, the Meridian system, now flying the crimson banners of the Kethvar Empire. In just 3 standard cycles, they had reduced an entire civilization to ash. The bridge itself was a testament to Kethvar supremacy, a vast circular chamber with walls of polished obsidian, lined with control stations manned by the Empire's finest warriors. Each station pulsed with the blue-white glow of plasma energy, the same technology that had brought 1,000 worlds to their knees. The ceiling displayed a real-time map of the galaxy, with conquered territories marked in deep red, a crimson stain that had been spreading relentlessly for 5 centuries. Admiral, his aide, Commander Yextar, approached with the characteristic clicking of claws on metal. The sound echoed through the chamber, a rhythmic percussion that had become the soundtrack of conquest. The resource extraction from Meridian 7 is proceeding ahead of schedule. The surviving population has been relocated to the labor camps. Zekthal's reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. His amber eyes reflected the tactical display's glow as he watched mining operations strip the Meridian worlds bare. The Kethvar had perfected the art of systematic conquest, swift, brutal, and complete. They left nothing to chance, nothing to resistance. Excellent. The Meridian crystals will fuel our fleet for the next expansion phase. He turned to study the rows of data streaming across subsidiary screens. What news of our next target? The commander activated his wrist display, projecting a small blue-green world that rotated slowly in the holographic space between them. The scouts have identified a primitive world in the Sol system, 3rd planet from their star. The inhabitants call it Earth. Primitives. Zekthal's interest was piqued. The Kethvar preferred easy conquests, less damage to valuable resources, minimal fleet casualties, and quick integration into the Empire's vast machine of exploitation. Indeed, Admiral, our long-range sensors indicate they've barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Single-world species, no significant military presence detected beyond primitive nuclear weapons and crude projectile systems. Our xenobiologists estimate conquest time at less than 1 solar day. Zekthal studied the projection with the calculating gaze of a predator. The planet appeared unremarkable. Standard oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, abundant water, single sapient species. Their preliminary scans showed a world divided into competing nation-states, exactly the kind of fractured civilization that fell quickly to unified imperial assault. Population density? Approximately 7 billion individuals. Significant industrial capacity, but their technology is centuries behind ours. They still rely on chemical propulsion for space travel and electromagnetic radiation for communication. The Admiral's laugh was like grinding stone. How quaint. And their military capabilities. Fragmented command structure. Multiple competing armies with no unified defense network. They appear to spend most of their military resources fighting each other rather than preparing for external threats. Classic pre-space civilization behavior. Around the bridge, other officers had gathered to observe the briefing. Sub-Admiral Kethral, scarred from a dozen campaigns, examined the tactical readouts with professional interest. Their largest military formations appear to be concentrated in defensive positions along territorial boundaries. They're prepared to fight each other, not us. Perfect, Zekthal mused. After 500 years of expansion, the Kethvar Empire had never met a species that could withstand their military might. Their plasma weapons could cut through any known armor. Their energy shields could deflect the most advanced projectiles, and their superior tactics had crushed civilizations far more advanced than this Earth. The Empire had developed a science of conquest, refined through centuries of warfare against countless species. He gestured toward the weapons display. Remind me of our current fleet composition. 317 vessels, Admiral. 47 heavy cruisers, 120 destroyers, 93 assault ships, and 57 support vessels. Full complement of plasma artillery, ion cannons, and orbital bombardment systems. The numbers were overwhelming. The largest military force Earth had ever assembled in their entire history would be crushed by a single HFY destroyer. Their entire nuclear arsenal would barely scratch the shields of one Imperial cruiser. Excellent. Signal the fleet. We depart for Sol System at first light cycle. Zekthul turned back to the star map, already mentally adding Earth's system to the growing red tide of conquest. Inform the troop commanders that this should be a simple pacification mission. Standard protocol: destroy military installations, capture population centers, establish labor camps. I want this world processing resources within one standard week. As the massive fleet of triangular warships began their journey toward Earth, none of them suspected they were about to encounter something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had spent their entire existence at war with themselves. The HFY had conquered peaceful civilizations, advanced technological societies, and even warlike species, but they had never faced a world where every inhabitant was a potential soldier, where the entire planet was a fortress, and where the concept of surrender was literally unknown. Earth was about to teach the galaxy's greatest conquerors a lesson they would never forget. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was enjoying her morning coffee at the SETI facility in Puerto Rico when the impossible happened. The Arecibo Observatory's replacement array, built after the original's collapse, suddenly erupted with activity unlike anything in its operational history. Every screen in the building flickered and then exploded with data streams that defied comprehension. Elena, you need to see this. Her colleague, Dr. James Mitchell, came running down the corridor, his face pale and his usually perfect hair disheveled. The Deep Space Array is picking up massive signatures. They're artificial. Elena set down her mug, a faded NASA logo printed on ceramic that had seen better days, and followed him to the main observation deck. The screens showed a formation of ships unlike anything in human imagination. Sleek, predatory vessels that seemed to absorb light itself, their surfaces rippling with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. How many? She asked, her voice barely a whisper as she watched the tactical display update in real time. Over 300 confirmed contacts. They're decelerating from faster-than-light travel, something we can barely achieve with our most advanced prototypes. ETA to Earth orbit. He paused, recalculating. 6 hours, 14 minutes. The numbers were staggering. Each contact signature was larger than Earth's most massive space station. The energy readings suggested propulsion systems that operated on principles human science had only theorized about. Elena's hands shook as she reached for the emergency communication console. Within minutes, every government on Earth was in emergency session. The United Nations Security Council convened in record time, diplomats arriving in armored vehicles as global military commanders began mobilizing forces that seemed laughably inadequate against the approaching armada. Fighter jets scrambled from bases worldwide, their pilots knowing they were facing technology centuries beyond their comprehension. President Mackenzie, a former Air Force colonel who had never expected to face an alien invasion during his administration, stood in the White House Situation Room surrounded by advisors who looked as stunned as he felt. What are our options? Limited, replied Secretary of Defense Williams. Our most advanced weapons are fusion-powered missiles. Our newest fighters can barely reach orbit. Whatever's coming has technology we can't even properly analyze. Then we do what humans have always done, Mackenzie said grimly. We adapt, we survive, and we fight if necessary. His address to the world was broadcast from every available channel. Citizens of Earth, today we face the unknown. We do not know the intentions of these visitors, but we will meet them with dignity and strength. This is not the end of our story. It is the beginning of a new chapter. On the flagship Vortak, Admiral Zekthul watched the primitive planet grow larger on his screens. The blue-green world rotated peacefully, its surface unmarked by the plasma scarring that characterized most conquered worlds. Soon, it would bear the marks of imperial dominance. Any response from the surface? He asked his communications officer. They're attempting to communicate, Admiral. Crude electromagnetic signals, radio waves, primarily. The Universal Translator is processing their language databases now. Interesting, They appear to have multiple distinct languages rather than a unified planetary communication system. Primitive indeed. Most species either surrender immediately upon seeing our fleet or attack in desperate, futile gestures. These humans seem curious. The first transmission from Earth came through moments later, crackling with static but clear in its intent. It was President Mackenzie's voice, automatically translated into the harsh, clicking language of the Kethvar. To our visitors from the stars, we welcome you to Earth. We come in peace and hope for peaceful dialogue between our peoples. We offer our friendship and our desire to learn from your advanced civilization. Zekthal's laughter was like grinding stone against metal. Peaceful dialogue, how quaint. They want to learn from us. He turned to his weapons officer. They will learn, indeed. Open a channel to the entire planet. His response was broadcast simultaneously to every radio, television, internet stream, and communication device on Earth. The alien voice, translated through emergency broadcasting systems, carried the weight of inevitable conquest. Humans of Earth, I am Fleet Admiral Zekthal of the Kethvar Empire. You have 1 solar hour to surrender unconditionally. Lay down your weapons, abandon your governments, and prepare for integration into our labor forces. Resistance will result in the complete annihilation of your species. This is your only warning. The channel closed, leaving Earth in stunned silence that lasted exactly 17 seconds. Then, in military bases around the world, a different kind of preparation began. Humanity might be primitive by galactic standards, but they had one advantage the Kethvar couldn't possibly understand. They had never known peace. Every human nation had spent centuries preparing for war, not against aliens but against each other. Every military doctrine, every weapon system, every tactical manual had been written by a species that had turned warfare into an art form. The Kethvar had given humanity 1 hour to surrender. Humanity used that hour to prepare for the greatest war in their history. General Patricia Harrison stood in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by the greatest military minds Earth had ever assembled. The underground facility hummed with activity as personnel moved between stations displaying real-time satellite feeds, communication arrays, and tactical overlays. The holographic displays showed the Kethvar fleet in perfect formation, textbook military precision that would have impressed any military academy professor. Analysis? She asked curtly, her steel-gray eyes fixed on the alien formation hanging in Earth's orbit like a sword of Damocles. Colonel Singh, the strategy advisor who had written 3 books on asymmetric warfare, gestured to the tactical display with a laser pointer. They're following standard siege protocols, ma'am. Overwhelming force positioned for maximum psychological impact. Typical for a technologically superior force facing primitives. They expect us to break under their initial show of force. And if we don't? Then they'll systematically destroy population centers until we surrender. Classic imperial doctrine, crush resistance through demonstration of overwhelming power. General Harrison studied the alien formation with the calculating gaze of someone who had spent 30 years studying military history, from ancient Rome's legions to modern asymmetric conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. Each enemy vessel was positioned with mathematical precision, covering approach vectors and escape routes with ruthless efficiency. They're fighting like we used to fight, she observed. Clean, honorable, efficient. Textbook military doctrine. Ma'am, Colonel, what's the first rule of asymmetric warfare? Singh's eyes lit up with understanding as the implications hit him. Never fight the enemy's battle. Make them fight yours. Exactly. Signal all commands. Implement Protocol 7. The hour passed like a countdown to doomsday. Earth's response was not surrender, but calculated silence that stretched across global communication networks. In command centers worldwide, military leaders watched their screens and waited for the storm. Zekthal's patience wore thin as the deadline approached. Standing on his bridge, surrounded by tactical displays showing Earth's stubborn silence, he felt the first stirrings of annoyance. Very well. Target their capital installations. Demonstrate our power with precision strikes. Minimal civilian casualties. We need workers, not corpses. The first wave of Kethvar fighters descended toward Earth's major cities like falling stars. 60 sleek craft, each one capable of leveling a city block, streaked through Earth's atmosphere with plasma weapons charging. Their pilots, veterans of 100 conquests, expected token resistance at best. They never reached their targets. What the Kethvar didn't know was that humans had been preparing for war in space for decades. Not against aliens, against each other. The Cold War had never truly ended. It had simply evolved. Every major power had secret orbital defense networks, particle beam weapons disguised as communication satellites, and interceptor systems that existed in the shadowy world of military black projects. As the alien fighters entered Earth's atmosphere, they were met by a storm of destruction that defied every tactical model in the Kethvar database. Tungsten rods fired from orbital railguns struck with the force of nuclear weapons. Surface-to-air missiles rose from hidden launchers concealed in mountains, forests, and urban structures. Experimental laser defense systems that had been testing for decades against theoretical threats suddenly had real targets. The sky above every major city erupted in brilliant flashes as advanced human technology met alien shields. What the Kethvar pilots saw in their final moments was impossible. Primitive humans wielding weapons that shouldn't have existed, coordinated through communication networks that operated on principles their own technology couldn't jam. The first Kethvar fighter to fall crashed into the Pacific Ocean, its wreckage sinking 3 miles to the ocean floor. The second exploded above Moscow in a fireball visible from orbit. A third was brought down by a railgun strike over the Australian outback. Within 12 minutes, 47 alien craft were burning in Earth's atmosphere or scattered across the planet's surface as twisted metal. On the flagship, alarm klaxons blared as Zekthal watched his tactical display in disbelief. Red warning symbols flashed where his fighters should have been. Battle-hardened veterans who had never lost a single engagement were simply gone. Impossible. They're primitives. His claws scraped deep gouges in the metal console as he struggled to process what he was seeing. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported, voice shaking, "we've lost contact with Attack Squadron 7. The humans have some kind of defensive network we didn't detect. Our scans showed primitive radar and basic missile systems, but they're using technology that our sensors classified as impossible for their development level." Zekthal's amber eyes burned as he stared at the tactical display. In 500 years of conquest, spanning dozens of star systems and countless species, the Kethvar had never lost a single ship in an opening assault. Their doctrine was built on the assumption of technological supremacy. Signal the fleet. Battle formation. If they want to fight, we'll give them a war they cannot win. But as the massive alien warships began their descent toward Earth, humanity was preparing to teach the galaxy's greatest conquerors a lesson they would never forget. Humans didn't just fight to win, they fought to survive. And there was nothing more dangerous than a species that had learned to wage war against itself. Admiral Zekthal expected the humans to retreat after losing their orbital defenses. Instead, they did something unprecedented in his 5 centuries of military experience. They attacked with a ferocity that defied all rational tactical doctrine. The assault came from everywhere at once, coordinated through communication networks that the Kethvar hadn't even detected. Submarines launched nuclear missiles from the ocean depths, their payloads streaking through the atmosphere like artificial meteors. Stealth aircraft emerged from cloud cover where they had been hiding for hours, their radar signatures masked by technology the aliens couldn't comprehend. Mobile missile batteries that had been disguised as civilian vehicles suddenly revealed themselves across 6 continents and opened fire simultaneously. "Admiral," Communications Officer Vekran's voice cracked with panic as he watched his displays fill with incoming projectile warnings. "The humans are using nuclear weapons. They're irradiating their own planet." Zekthal watched in growing horror as human cities disappeared in mushroom clouds. Not from Kethvar weapons, but from their own nuclear arsenals. The humans were systematically destroying their own infrastructure to deny it to the invaders. Every major port, every strategic bridge, every fuel depot was being obliterated by the very people who had built them. "They're insane," he whispered, his scaled hands trembling as he gripped the command console. They're committing planetary suicide, but it was working with devastating efficiency. The Kethvar fleet, designed for precision strikes against military targets and infrastructure capture, was being decimated by a species that seemed to have no concept of military honor, self-preservation, or the value of their own civilization. Captain Maria Santos piloted her modified F-35 through the smoke-filled skies above what used to be New York City, her aircraft loaded with experimental weapons that had never been tested in combat. Her radio crackled with reports from around the globe, each transmission painting a picture of coordinated global destruction. Berlin is gone, but we took out their command ship with a ramming attack. Tokyo is burning, but the alien ground forces are trapped in the subway tunnels with nerve gas. Moscow is requesting permission to use the experimental antimatter charges. Permission granted, came the reply from deep underground bunkers that had been carved from solid rock during the Cold War. Use everything we have. Hold nothing back. The Kethvar had never fought an enemy that would sacrifice everything to win. Their wars were clean, efficient affairs between civilized species who understood the value of preserved infrastructure and living populations. They had never encountered a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of total war, warfare where victory mattered more than survival. When the alien ground forces finally landed in major cities, they expected to face organized military resistance from command structures and supply lines. Instead, they found themselves in urban warfare against an entire population that had turned their homeworld into a fortress. Every human was a potential soldier, every building a potential bunker, every street a potential killing ground. Children threw improvised explosives from apartment windows, their devices cobbled together from household chemicals and electronics. Elderly citizens operated sniper rifles from concealed positions, their decades of hunting experience translated into deadly urban warfare. Hospital patients disconnected from life support picked up weapons and continued fighting until their last breath, choosing to die as soldiers rather than victims. Commander Yextar led the assault on London, expecting to capture the British government in a swift strike that would break human resistance. Instead, his forces became bogged down in the London underground, fighting a guerrilla war against humans who knew every tunnel, every hidden passage, every weak point in their own infrastructure. "Admiral," he radioed from the chaos below ground, his voice echoing through flooded tunnels. "The humans, they're using their own subway system as a weapon. They've flooded sections with toxic gas, collapsed tunnels to trap our forces, and rigged their own monuments with explosives. Big Ben detonated when we tried to establish a command post. They destroyed their own parliament building rather than let us occupy it." Above ground, the remaining human forces implemented something their military manuals called scorched earth, a concept utterly alien to the Kethvar mind. Power plants were destroyed before they could be captured. Their nuclear cores melted down in controlled disasters. Fuel depots were incinerated in massive fireballs that could be seen from orbit. Food supplies were contaminated with biological agents that rendered them useless to alien physiology. The humans were methodically destroying everything of value on their own planet. Zechthal realized, too late, that he was fighting a species that had learned warfare from the ultimate teacher, themselves. For thousands of years, humans had fought humans, developing tactics and strategies that no external enemy could predict or counter. They had perfected the art of fighting against their own technology, their own psychology, their own weaknesses. The Kethvar fought to conquer. Humans fought to survive. And survival, as the galaxy was about to learn, was the most dangerous motivation of all. 3 days into the invasion, Admiral Zechthal faced something he had never experienced in 5 centuries of conquest. Doubt. The emotion was alien to him, as foreign as the humans who had shattered every tactical assumption the Kethvar had developed over their long history of galactic domination. The Kethvar fleet had been reduced to 60% strength. The humans had lost major cities, but they fought on with a ferocity that bordered on supernatural determination. Worse, they were learning at a rate that defied every xenobiological model in the Imperial database. "Admiral," Science Officer Kethmol reported, his voice trembling as he reviewed the latest battlefield analysis. "The humans are adapting our plasma technology. They've somehow integrated our weapons into their own systems. We have confirmed reports of human soldiers carrying modified Kethvar plasma rifles. This was impossible. The Kethvar had never met a species capable of reverse engineering their technology so quickly. Most civilizations took decades to understand even basic imperial technology. What they didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for technological warfare for decades. Not against aliens, but against each other. Every major power on Earth had teams of scientists whose sole purpose was to instantly analyze and counter enemy technology. The moment the first Kethvar fighter crashed into the Pacific, human engineers were dissecting its weapon systems with the desperate efficiency of a species that had spent centuries stealing, adapting, and improving military technology from their enemies. Dr. Elizabeth Wright led the crash analysis team at Area 51, a facility that had been built to study theoretical alien technology and now found itself dealing with the real thing. Working with barely 3 hours of sleep in the past 72 hours, her team had cracked the basic principles of plasma weapon technology in 36 hours. "It's elegant," she reported to military command through encrypted channels. "But it's also predictable. They've been using the same basic technology for centuries. No innovation, no adaptation. It's like they've forgotten how to improve their own weapons. Can we use it against them? We're already using it. The first human plasma rifles will be ready in 12 hours. But that's not the best part. We found weaknesses in their shielding systems. Their energy barriers are designed to stop their own weapons, not ours. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the Kethvar themselves. Captain Thekvar of the assault cruiser Morvith had been captured when his ship was brought down by a coordinated missile strike over the Australian outback. He was being held in a deep underground facility that had once been a Cold War bunker, now repurposed as humanity's first alien detention center. His interrogation was conducted by Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenopsychologist who had been studying theoretical alien behavior and now found herself face-to-face with the real thing. The session was being broadcast to every military command center on Earth. "You're making a mistake," Thekvar said in broken English, his reptilian features showing the first signs of uncertainty that any human had seen from a Kethvar. "The Empire has never been defeated. When Admiral Zekthul calls for reinforcements, he already has," Dr. Kim interrupted, sliding a data pad across the metal table. "We've been monitoring your communications." No response. For the first time, doubt flickered in the alien's amber eyes. "That's impossible. The Empire always responds to distress calls." "Not this time. Your Empire doesn't want to admit that a primitive species is defeating them. They've cut you off. You're expendable." The psychological warfare was as devastating as the physical battle. The Kethvar had never fought alone. They had always been part of a vast, invincible empire that guaranteed reinforcement and support. The realization that they were abandoned broke something fundamental in their morale. Meanwhile, human resistance was growing stronger with each passing hour. The surviving military forces had reorganized into something the Kethvar had never seen: a global unified command structure that transcended national boundaries. Every remaining human soldier, from special forces operators to civilian militia, was now part of a single, coordinated effort. General Harrison, now commanding from a mobile headquarters that moved constantly through underground tunnel networks to avoid orbital strikes, issued new orders that would have been impossible 3 days earlier. "Phase 2 begins now. We're done playing defense." Around the world, human forces emerged from their hiding places, not to surrender, but to hunt. The Kethvar had superior technology, but humans had superior knowledge of their own planet and an intimate understanding of how to use terrain, weather, and environmental factors as weapons. In the Amazon rainforest, Kethvar patrols were ambushed by indigenous warriors who had learned to use alien plasma weapons with deadly efficiency. The aliens' energy signatures stood out like beacons in the dense foliage, while human heat signatures blended with the natural environment. In the Arctic, Norwegian special forces used the harsh environment to their advantage, striking from snow-covered positions that alien sensors couldn't distinguish from natural ice formations. Their white camouflage was perfect against enemies who had never learned to fight in extreme cold. The Kethvar began to realize they weren't fighting an army. They were fighting an entire species that had turned their homeworld into a fortress, every citizen into a soldier, and every natural feature into a weapon. And for the first time in 5 centuries, the mighty Kethvar Empire was losing. Admiral Zekthal stared at the tactical display in disbelief, his scaled hands trembling as he gripped the command console. His mighty fleet, which had begun the invasion with 317 ships and the confidence of 5 centuries of unbroken conquest, was now reduced to 89 functional vessels. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned their own planet into a weapon that was systematically destroying the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Status report," he demanded, his voice carrying the desperation of a commander watching his empire crumble in real time. "Admiral." His tactical officer's voice trembled with barely contained panic. "We've lost all ground forces in the Asian sector. The humans have developed some kind of coordinated hive-mind warfare. They're sharing information instantaneously across the globe through networks we can't jam or intercept." What the Kethvar didn't understand was the Internet, humanity's global communication network that had evolved from military origins during their Cold War. Every human fighter could access real-time intelligence, tactical updates, and strategic coordination through devices as simple as modified smartphones. The aliens had never encountered a species that could coordinate planetary defense through civilian technology. More disturbing was the humans' complete disregard for conventional military doctrine. They had no concept of acceptable losses or strategic withdrawal. Every human seemed willing to die to kill even one alien invader, turning every engagement into a potential massacre for the technologically superior Kethvar. Captain Rodriguez, now leading a mixed unit of American Marines, Russian Spetsnaz, and British SAS soldiers, demonstrated this perfectly. His team had been tracking a Kethvar patrol through the ruins of Chicago for 3 days, using the devastated cityscape as perfect camouflage. When they finally struck, it was with a precision that would have impressed any military academy in the galaxy. "Remember," Rodriguez whispered into his comm unit, his voice barely audible through the encrypted channel. "They're stronger and faster than us individually, but they've never fought in urban ruins against an enemy that knows every pipe, every sewer, every hidden passage. This is our terrain now." The alien patrol walked into a kill zone that had been prepared over 48 hours. Human fighters struck simultaneously from sewers, from collapsed buildings, from positions inside rubble that no sane military force would consider defensible. The Kethvar found themselves fighting an enemy that treated suicide missions as standard operating procedure, where soldiers would detonate themselves rather than allow aliens to capture territory. But the most terrifying development for the Kethvar was human adaptation. Within a week, human soldiers were carrying modified alien weapons that had been improved with human engineering. They wore salvaged alien armor that had been adapted to human physiology. They used captured alien technology with an efficiency that stunned their former owners. Sergeant Lisa Park, formerly of the South Korean military, now commanded a unit equipped entirely with captured Kethvar gear. Her plasma rifle had been jury-rigged with human electronics that increased its firing rate by 30%. Her armor was a hybrid of alien technology and human engineering that provided better protection than the original design. "Target acquired," she reported, watching a Kethvar supply convoy through her modified scope that combined alien optics with human targeting systems. "Initiating hunter-killer protocol." The convoy was destroyed in minutes. The aliens never saw the attack coming, struck by weapons that had once belonged to their own forces but now served human ingenuity. This was the nightmare scenario for the Kethvar, an enemy that not only refused to surrender, but actively improved with each encounter. Every battle made the humans stronger, more experienced, more dangerous. They were learning alien tactics faster than the aliens could adapt to human unpredictability. Admiral Zekthal made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Begin orbital bombardment. Full power. Turn this planet into glass. But even this desperate measure was countered by human ingenuity. The surviving human forces had prepared for this possibility with the same methodical planning they applied to everything else. Deep underground bunkers that had been carved from solid rock during the Cold War protected the core of human resistance. Natural cave systems were reinforced with salvaged alien technology. Hardened shelters designed to survive nuclear war now sheltered the remnants of human civilization. As the Kethvar fleet began its final assault, raining plasma fire down on Earth's surface, they discovered that humans had one more surprise waiting for them. They had learned to fight in space. The first human spacecraft to engage the alien fleet was a hastily modified cargo vessel, a converted asteroid mining ship loaded with nuclear weapons and piloted by volunteers who had no intention of returning home. It used a suicide ramming attack that would have been considered barbaric by any civilized species. It worked with devastating effectiveness. The explosion took out 2 Kethvar destroyers and damaged the flagship's shields. More importantly, it proved that humans could fight in an environment where they had no business surviving. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, voice breaking with the strain of consecutive defeats. "We're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's from their military command." The message was simple, delivered in perfect Kethvar language through captured communication equipment. "This is General Patricia Harrison of the United Earth Defense Force. We have a proposal for you." Zekthul, desperate and surrounded by the wreckage of his once mighty fleet, opened the channel with the reluctance of a predator who had suddenly become prey. "Speak, human. Leave now and we'll let you live. Stay, and we'll show you what happens when you threaten a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to kill." For the first time in 5 centuries, a Kethvar admiral was being offered terms by his enemy. And for the first time in his life, Zekthul was afraid. The evacuation of the Kethvar fleet began 3 hours after General Harrison's ultimatum, a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just 1 week earlier. Admiral Zekthul, his pride shattered and his forces decimated, watched his remaining ships limp away from Earth's gravity well like wounded animals fleeing a predator they had fatally underestimated. "Admiral," Commander Yextar approached cautiously, his voice carrying the weight of unprecedented defeat. "The humans? They're not pursuing us. They're simply watching." Indeed, the human forces had simply stopped their relentless attacks. No final vindictive strike against the fleeing aliens. No pursuit to ensure total destruction. They had achieved their objective with the cold efficiency that had characterized their entire defense. Earth was free, and that was enough. But the cost was staggering beyond imagination. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now one of the few surviving members of the original SETI team, stood in the ruins of what had been New York City. The aliens were gone, but the scars of the war would last for generations. The city that had once housed 8 million people was now a landscape of twisted metal and radioactive glass, a monument to humanity's willingness to destroy everything they had built rather than surrender it to conquerors. "Casualty report," she requested from the Emergency Coordination Center, her voice hollow with exhaustion and grief. "Approximately 2.3 billion dead," came the reply through crackling communication equipment. 47 major cities destroyed or severely damaged. Infrastructure is gone, power grids, communication networks, transportation systems. Nuclear contamination in 37 zones will require decades of cleanup. Agricultural production has dropped by 70%. It will take generations to rebuild what we destroyed in 1 week. But they had won. Against impossible odds, with technology centuries behind their enemies, humanity had defeated the greatest military force in the galaxy. The price had been nearly everything they had built as a civilization, but their freedom remained intact. General Harrison, now the de facto leader of Earth's survivors, addressed the world from a mobile command center that had once been a subway tunnel. "Today, we proved something that no species in the galaxy has ever proven before. We showed that freedom is not free, that technology cannot replace determination, and that the will to survive can overcome any technological advantage. We paid the ultimate price, but we remain free." The message was broadcast not just to Earth's surviving population, but to every corner of the galaxy through captured Kethvar communication equipment. Humanity had learned to use alien technology with the same ruthless efficiency they applied to everything else. Within days, the story spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. A primitive species had defeated the mighty Kethvar Empire, not through superior technology or brilliant strategy, but through sheer, uncompromising will and a readiness to sacrifice everything for freedom. The news traveled through hyperspace communication networks, reaching civilizations that had lived in fear of Kethvar expansion for centuries. Other species began to take notice with growing hope and wonder. The Meridian survivors, still enslaved in Kethvar labor camps, heard the story through smuggled communications and began to organize resistance movements. The Vorthan Federation, long threatened by Kethvar expansion, sent secret diplomatic communications to Earth offering technological assistance and alliance. Admiral Zekthul, meanwhile, faced a court-martial from his own empire. His failure was deemed impossible by imperial leadership, his reports dismissed as cowardice or insanity. But the evidence was undeniable. The Kethvar had met their match in a species that refused to acknowledge defeat. The humans, he told the tribunal in his final testimony, are not like other species we have conquered. They do not fight for conquest, glory, or resources. They fight for survival. And a species that has spent its entire existence at war with itself, such a species cannot be defeated by conventional means. They turn their own world into a weapon, their own people into an army. They would rather die free than live as slaves. The Kethvar Empire, shaken by their first defeat in 5 centuries, began to change their expansion policies. Perhaps there were some species that were simply too dangerous to conquer, too willing to pay any price for their freedom. 6 months after the invasion, Earth had begun to rebuild with a unity that had never existed before. The surviving human population had access to alien technology now, salvaged from the wreckage of the Kethvar fleet, and they were using it to create something unprecedented. A unified planetary government focused on one goal, ensuring that humanity would never again be caught unprepared. Dr. Sarah Kim, now heading the new Department of Xenological Defense, submitted her final report on the invasion. The Kethvar made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They saw our lack of interstellar travel as a sign of primitive development. They failed to understand that we had spent millennia developing the most sophisticated military doctrines in the galaxy. We didn't need to fight aliens, we had been preparing to fight ourselves. Every human conflict, from tribal warfare to world wars, had been preparation for this moment. The galaxy had learned a new lesson. There was a species on the 3rd planet of an unremarkable star that had done something unprecedented. They had turned their homeworld into a fortress, their entire population into an army, and their very existence into a weapon. More importantly, they had proven that freedom was worth any price, even the destruction of their own civilization. The Kethvar thought they were invincible. They were wrong. And now, the galaxy knew that there was one species that would never surrender, never retreat, and never stop fighting for their freedom, no matter the cost. Humanity had announced its arrival to the galaxy in the most human way possible, by winning a war that should have been impossible to win. The age of human expansion was about to begin.